you need me.
6.
You like that chair?
I like my back better. Yeah.
All right, Rabbi Isai.
Modern technology.
We are ready to start. Siman 321 is the review project for the night. So basically, in this Siman, we discuss 3 malachas. The malacha of ma'abed, the malacha of Techinah, and the malacha of Lisha. Ma'abed means tanning, the process of turning the animal's skin into leather. Excuse me. They did that in the Mishkan, by the way, when they processed the hides for the purpose of covering the Mishkan. Techinah is grinding. They did that in the process of making the spices for the ketoros and so on, as well as to dye the various tapestries. And Lisha is kneading. They did that,
Bread.
I guess, for the bread.
Anything that they put together into a more solid.
Yeah.
With water, right?
Yeah, with water. I guess it's for the bread. Maybe also in the context of the dyeing of the tapestries. Possibly they also did Lisha. I'm not sure.
It was like when you combine water with some powdered particles to make a more solid mass.
Exactly. That's correct. Making a dough-like mass. Okay, so of course, by Torah law, ma'abed means to not take a skin of an animal and make it into leather. By rabbinic law, we also include salting food in a way that preserves it. Just like the leather gets preserved, the skin gets preserved and becomes leather. So when you preserve food through salting, that's similar to ma'abed. Now, it's not a Torah violation because all you're doing, after all, is preserving food. You're not actually changing it to something else. Like when you make a skin into leather, you're kind of making a permanent thing. Here, you're just making food. It's going to last longer, but eventually you're going to eat it. So it's not really Torah level kind of tanning. But by rabbinic law, it is. This would include salting meat in order to extract the blood, which is what we do, obviously, with any meat that we want to eat as kosher meat. Unless, of course, you want to roast it, that's something else, but normally the meat is salted. That would be a rabbinic violation, as well as salting the meat in such a way that you literally preserve it. You salt it, a very heavy amount of salt that extracts the liquid, dries it out, and then you can have beef jerky or whatever. So that would also be a rabbinic violation. Now, included in this, and this following discussion is actually a subject of dispute. But let's first start with this opinion, and that is that included in this is pickling vegetables. When you pickle vegetables, whether in salt alone, which extracts the liquid and it can sit in that liquid and pickle, or in brine, so it's possible that is also, by rabbinic law, similar to Ibud, to tanning. Because just like with making leather, you're using the salt in such a way that it's changing like the texture of the skin and making it into leather. So here it's changing the consistency and the moisture level of the fruit, or the vegetables, I should say, and changing them chemically inside, and that's in that way it's similar to Ibud. Actually, before we get into pickles, which is a machlokes, I should also mention the concept of making salt water. Making salt water is also forbidden by rabbinic law because it could be considered part of the process of tanning. Because when you tan, you put the skin in the salt water. So therefore, making the salt water itself is a problem because it resembles that. And therefore, you cannot make more than the amount of water that you need for one meal. What you need for one meal, that's more like a dip, and that's not going to look like a percentage. Exactly. A very high concentration of salt, which we don't really do, so it's not so practical. But in theory, if you make it 2/3 salt to 1/3 water, that would be forbidden regardless of the amount.
So why for
Pesach Seder? Why did they say to make the salt water before?
That's exactly it.
So
Because
you're
if you
gonna
don't
use
make
it
it
right away,
if
you're
you
not
don't
gonna
make it before,
like Erev Pesach. Why
if you
not
don't
make
make
on
it,
Pesach?
if you don't know, well, on Pesach itself, you're allowed to. It's when it comes out on Shabbos, that's an issue. On Pesach itself, you're allowed to, because that's Tzarech Achal Nefesh, it's for the purpose of eating. But when it comes out on Shabbos, that's when you're supposed to make it before. Because if not, you're supposed to make a small amount. Otherwise, it looks like you're making an amount
That's only if it comes out of
How
Matzah
we
Shabbos.
follow?
on
No,
Shabbos,
the first night
Friday
of
night.
Shabbos.
Friday
Yeah,
night.
but can you make it Erev Shabbos?
Erev Shabbos, you can
So
make
Erev Shabbos is a problem.
Erev Shabbos, no problem. And
But if you
Yom Tov
forgot-
per se is no problem. If it's
Right.
when the first night coincides with Shabbos,
With Shabbos.
that's when you have a problem. You should make it before
You
Shabbos.
make it before Shabbos.
Correct.
So it's when that first night is Motzei Shabbos.
Then it's no problem either.
No
You just
problem
make it
either.
Motzei Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos is only Yom Tov. It's not Shabbos anymore.
Right. So it's if you forgot to make it Erev Shabbos and it's that first night.
And it's Friday night, exactly. Then you have to make a small amount. So the truth is we usually only make a small amount, but nevertheless, smaller than that. Yes.
Are we follow this halacha here? They said about the salad. If you put in the salad salt, you have to put right away oil or something to
Yes.
change that.
Yeah, but anyway.
That's correct.
Are we follow that?
Yes, we do. You don't add salt to a salad unless you're going to put on the dressing right away. You can't salt more than one piece of vegetable at once unless you're going to put on dressing right away. We do follow that, yes. What are we missing for our mitten tonight?
You put the salad dressing on first, not the salt.
I'm hoping that Ronnie will come. I don't know where he is. Maybe.
It's shamash.
There.
Who is this?
He's talking about.
Okay. So we continue when we say, yes. Some say, going back to pickling, some say that the issue with pickling vegetables is not about Ibud at all, but it's rather about bishul midrabanan, that if you pickle, so it's a chemical process that is similar to cooking. So it's interesting that we say that, they pointed out in the dirshu, when it comes to cooking in the sun, we say no problem, cook in the sun. It's nothing at all like they did in the Mishkan. So that's not going to lead to cooking with fire. When it comes to pickling, which doesn't seem to be similar to cooking with fire, nevertheless, they say, it's mutter, so what's that about? So they say that even though it's not similar to cooking with fire, but it is a normal way to prepare food. Because it's a normal way to prepare food, and it is similar to cooking insofar as the chemical changes to the food. So because if you were allowed to do that, you might come to cook, because that's another normal way, so to speak, to prepare food. Cooking in the sun is simply not a normal thing to do, and that's why it's not even included in the decree. So, okay, and from here, we come to discuss the question of putting salt on your cucumbers or your radishes or your tomatoes or anything like that. So definitely you're allowed to salt one piece at a time and eat it. And definitely you're not allowed to salt any piece, even one piece, and leave it for the length of an entire soda, from the beginning to the end of the soda. I don't know exactly how long that is, an hour or whatever. Because that is going to extract the liquid from it, and it's going to be similar to tanning. On the other hand, if you are going to salt one at a time, salting a bunch of them together, even if you then subsequently eat them right away, that could again resemble tanning because you're doing a bunch at a time. But if you do one at a time, and then you eat them one at a time, like, for example, you have a pile of salt, pile of radishes, dip, 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 eat, eat, eat. So that's a machlokes. Some say, like the Trumas Hadeshin says that is okay, because the way you're salting is is not similar to the tanning because you're just doing one at a time. And the amount of time you're leaving it just to eat it right away is not enough to have it considered. No, 321. 321. The questions we'll do tomorrow night, Mr. Shem. 300 questions in 120 minutes. It's no problem. We'll do half a minute per question.
Test.
We know. If I could count the number of times I've called over Vosner the past 48
But is it
hours.
definitely next week? Or
No, it is not definitely.
Confirm.
Not definitely next week. Oh yeah. I was afraid you would start asking that. That's why I wanted to.
No, I was just saying.
That's why I wanted it with a week buffer in between, so we wouldn't even come to this question. Tishrei is crazy time. Everybody's going to forget, and then we're going to have
If
to.
the rabbi doesn't
delay.
confirm for next week, then when it's,
If the rabbi can't confirm, then we're in trouble.
that's what I'm saying.
חצי להשם, חצי לך. I have a lot of time to study very soon.
Yeah, I do too. To me, it doesn't matter.
Oh.
I definitely could, I could
When I
study.
saw those questions, I got such yeush, I didn't know what to do with my life.
What?
Okay, let me ask any 15 questions to the canal. Let's see if any.
No, that's tomorrow night. That's tomorrow night. Don't confuse the issue.
But we don't do 2 days a question.
Lord.
It depends when the test is.
If it's next week, so we should do 2 days, right? Today and tomorrow.
I didn't look at the question, I said, let me finish review and then go.
At David's suggestion, what I'm going to do is, because the question may seem overwhelming, which was not my intention, I'm going to go over the questions and I'm going to choose out and maybe put them in bold or separate whatever, like the key questions. And then the rest of them you could get to if you
You
get
can
to.
assume you're going to
The
go
one we
official
sent
question.
tonight? The one we
Sorry?
sent today?
Today I sent a review for 321. I'm talking about Erev Shabbat. I sent 11 pages.
Test.
It just,
Erev Shabbat?
I had too much time. When I was traveling to New York, I had too much time on my hands. So
You told us you were going to do that.
You wrote all that in one sitting?
No, I wrote it on the plane on the way there, and in the morning after the wedding. Yeah. Okay. So, which sif? No, I'm past Aleph. In Dalet. Yeah, Shem Chaf Aleph, Dalet. I'm not reading inside. I'm just reviewing. So Lamaisa, the Machaber says to be strict and not even to do more than one at a time. That's the opinion of the Raivon and Magen Avram and so on. So that's what a person should follow in practice. Now, this being said, there is a svara that kind of knocks off this whole discussion and makes it almost irrelevant. Because Rav Shlomo Zalman says that this whole discussion only applies to vegetables that are pickled in the way that they are, in the state that they're in. Meaning to say, if it's a type of vegetable that is only pickled whole and not in slices, so then you can slice it. And, oh, this is a carpool call. I have to take it with school coming tomorrow. Excuse me. Hello. Hi. What do you think?
So you saw the question, it's too much?
אני מקווה שהבן אדם שחסר עליו יודע את הגיהנום שהולך להיות.
יש הרבה.
כן, they were good questions.
They're very good questions. Here.
זה מגילת אסתר.
נכון?
בסדר.
342 questions.
תדפוק פנינו, שלח יום שישי.
שלח לי, זה שבת.
יום שישי, בשבת.
אני יודע,
בשבת הוא לא שולח.
רוצה שבת.
לא, אמרתי לך יום שישי.
יום שישי. אוקיי.
בשבת. 357.
350.
342. סליחה.
אז זה רק מצוות, אבל אנחנו נתקדם לשם תכף עוד מעט.
לפחות אתה לא.
יהיה בסדר, יהיה בסדר. עומדים כמה שאפשר.
אני שואל, אם שבת נופל באמצע השבוע, אם מותר לעשות הטמנה.
342.
אם שבת נופל באמצע השבוע.
אם מותר לעשות הטמנה.
153 זה ככה? מה אמרת?
אם שבת נופל באמצע השבוע, מותר לעשות הטמנה.
אם מותר לעשות
איזה שלום. אבל איך שבת נופל באמצע השבוע?
צריכים להחמיר בכל דיני התורה. צריכים להחמיר כמו טיוסי וכמו שבוע.
מותר לעשות.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All the best, bye. All right.
ברוך השם.
Baruch Hashem, all good. Okay, so when it comes to salting your salad, you have two options. You can either put on the dressing first and then salt it, or you can put on your salt first and then dress it. The only thing you cannot do is put on the salt and leave it and then dress it later, because during that interim time, the salt will do its work on the vegetables.
אז זה לא דרך אכילה?
מה?
אני לא רוצה סוס, אני לא רוצה סיזנים, אני רוצה רק טיפה מלח.
אז תשים על כל חתיכה ותאכל.
בסלט אבל אני רוצה.
מה? בסלט? לא.
כן.
If you want oil,
Not if there's more than one on the plate, and you're not gonna eat it. Right?
אז אני אומר, אני שם שמן, אבל אם מישהו שלא רוצה שמן, מה הוא? כן.
לא. לא ייתכן. One piece at a time.
How about what Zalman said? If they're
Oh yeah,
sliced,
yeah. If they're sliced,
if
so
they're
that-
sliced, then
actually in the case of salad,
it's still
it's
more
usually
than one.
sliced.
So it's
But it's
not
usually
right.
sliced. If that's not how they're pickled.
If it's not picky.
I don't know how they're pickled either, but it specifically mentions cut tomatoes.
So
But that's not
so
how
does
they
that-
pickle them.
So a tomato is a problem, let's say. Slice it up and it's not a problem. Now you have 5 or 6 slices next to each other.
Right.
Then you still have to eat them one at a time though, or
No.
does it matter? You just let
Part
them.
of Shlomo's almond, it's no problem.
How about if there's a different vegetable next to it sliced up?
It's a salad. though.
So it's a salad then. So according to Shlomo, I mean, a salad is going to be chopped up vegetables.
Right.
So according to it shouldn't be an issue at all. It would chop up
As long
salad.
as all those vegetables are not normally done, pickled, cut up, wouldn't be a problem.
So what-
So an Israeli salad is that's normal.
So what if you have this, sometimes I make this salad with these mini tomatoes.
That's a problem because it's a
Whole tomatoes, yeah.
It's a tiny.
It says there cherry
Okay.
tomatoes are a problem.
Oh, cherry.
Same
So
thing.
it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, correct.
Is everyone who doesn't agree with this?
I don't know.
So you're gonna be on it for vegetables or food also? But nobody pickles fruit in general.
Right.
Which one's salt?
Meats are pickled.
Put salt on mango.
I don't think you would put salt on them. However, for argument's sake, there is a question about putting sugar on things, maybe even fruit, because they say that even though sugar is not used for Ibud, it's not similar to tanning, but it could be similar to bishul, insofar as the fact that it does preserve. You could preserve with sugar.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Preserves.
Preserves.
They preserve
Oh, right,
fruit
right.
with sugar.
Preserves.
So there is a discussion, Lachreinim, if you're allowed to put sugar on fruits.
It looks like cooking, or that it's actually.
I mean, it's all looks like cooking. There's no
It's
actual
not a cooking malacha.
no actual
it's
cooking with any of
it's
this.
It's a mabit malacha.
Yeah.
I thought
It's
it
a
was
preservation malacha. It's like canning. It will in a higher concentration
So,
of
yeah,
salt
yesh
will
machmir.
come. That's when you go into the bishul.
not the little piece, not the little tiny stuff.
Right, when there's a lot of salt, then you get into the bishul issues.
All midarabanan.
Right.
All midarabanan.
Yeah.
So regarding the sugar, it's even not for the achila miyadit.
No, if you're gonna eat it right away, it's mutter, just like salt. So that's what they say. If you want to be machmer, sugar on that. If you eat it right away, yeah, no. If you eat it right away, it's okay. Then everybody agrees. Okay. Now, when it comes to things like eggs, meat, and those things which are not really going to be changed so much by the salt. Truth is, you could preserve meat with salt, but we're talking about you're not putting that amount that is going to preserve the meat. So you don't see any big change in them. So you're not allowed to do it from one seudah to the next. It's in morning to afternoon, but you are allowed to do it before. You could do it an hour before the seudah. There's no specific time limit as long as it's not the beginning of the day to the end.
So what if you do, let's say you cut the few pieces of meat in the plate and you put salt, and you end up eating only one piece, you get full.
Yeah,
You don't want to throw it and it's leftover. You usually put it back in the pan. You're allowed to.
Did you violate the malacha because it stayed?
And
Well-
basically, the meat is not always like the sauce on it, so it's gonna make.
Well, if it has sauce, then it's anyway same as salad. That it's not a problem anyway.
Like it's all been kind of like on a dry piece of meat.
Yeah,
You know,
correct.
Never cooked with any liquid.
Or it wasn't cooked, or now it's dry. It could be was cooked.
But how about with vegetables? Let's say you put more than you realize. Now you've got 2 vegetables over there that you're not going to eat. Have you violated the malacha? Is there a way to
Just add oil.
that's what I was thinking. Just kosher.
Just add oil.
Just add oil.
And the left oil and it's okay?
Yeah, because then it's not.
Well, what's
The oil breaks the power of the salt, so it doesn't have so much power to extract the liquid.
No, you mentioned if you have a plate, already you put salt, oil, everything is there.
No,
No,
you
that's
said-
not a problem. I
if you-
said if you didn't put oil, you put salt, you had 3 pieces, and then there were 2 left over there. So now it's salting. You can't let it salt because that's the
Then you
malacha.
put oil.
So put oil and that breaks it up.
Yep.
Whether you decide to eat it or not is irrelevant.
Or any type of liquid, basically.
Correct.
Water though? Not
Yeah,
water.
not water.
What?
We water.
Yeah, because you're putting water back in.
Okay. So we continue on, we say. The Taz says that you're allowed to do it in advance if for some reason there's an advantage to doing it in advance. For example, if you have meat, which is warm now, and later it's going to become cool, obviously, you want to salt it while it's still warm? Sure, the salt will spread into it better. In that case, he allows you to do it even from one soda to the next. Because according to the Taz, basically, there is no real isser of doing it in advance. It's just that if you cannot do it in advance, it's better. But if you need to, if for some reason you need to, then you're allowed to. Okay, now we have a chiddush in din. If you have wilted vegetables, wilted, your vegetables, they got,
Well, they're soft.
you have some pepper, and they look like they've seen better days. So you want to rejuvenate them. You put them in water, and they're as good as new. But you're not planning to eat them today.
But they say we cannot soak them in water.
No, Alter Rebbe says you can. You can soak it in water, and this is the chiddush, even though you're not planning to eat it on the same day. How can you prepare from one day to the next? Because you might change your mind. Since it's fit to eat on the day, and you might decide to eat on the day, it's okay. Just like we said before, you're allowed to wash cups
Right.
anytime during the day. Even after Shal Shudas, you're allowed to wash cups.
This is a good chance.
Because you might decide to
But not
eat, to
plates.
drink with it.
All the cups.
Exactly. All the cups.
And all
Yeah.
the plates,
Because
and everything.
you
No,
might
not
use
the
one of them,
plates.
and it's
The
not
plate
clear
as
which
well.
one.
No, not the
The
plates.
plate not after Shal Shudas. Because you don't usually eat after Shal Shudas. But drink, you usually drink whenever you're thirsty.
Even more so.
No, it depends. No, it depends. If it's a time that you might possibly eat, then it's okay. If not, then not.
But only on Seder Shlishit at the plate, right? For that, yes.
However, you mentioned to suck vegetables in water.
Yep.
When it comes to water, you might do clean up.
Yeah, that's if it's dirty. I'm talking about if it's not dirty. It's
It's
just
just
limp. It's limp,
It's
old. So that's allowed.
By putting it in your like changing the real formation.
No, you're just giving it some life. Okay, so now here is the next thing. On the other hand, when it comes to soaking meat in water, which they used to have to do in the olden days when they got meat from the actual shochet, and they would salt them in their own homes, like the people used to know how to do, and you have to salt it within 72 hours of the shechita, and if not, you have to soak it in water to extend it by another 72 hours. And if you didn't do that, you were stuck with meat that could not be cooked. Once it sits for 72 hours with its blood, the blood gets, so to speak, frozen in it, and it is not successfully extracted with malicha. The only way you can get it out is by barbecue. By barbecue. Tzliya.
Wait, so that's 3 consecutive 72-hour periods before the expiration, right?
72 hours. 3 consecutive 24 hours.
That's right.
Whenever you soak it, within those 72 hours, you extend it by 72 hours. So now your expiry time is coming up on Shabbos. So you want to soak it on Shabbos. Can't do it. Because that meat is basically inedible on Shabbos. Nobody eats raw meat. Truth is that some people do, but almost nobody eats raw meat. So if you personally happen to eat raw meat, okay. If you are actually planning to eat this meat, that's something else. But if you're not, and since most people don't, it's clear that you're preparing this for after Shabbos. Exactly. It's clear that you're preparing it for after Shabbos. And as such, you can't do it. Because we know you're not allowed to prepare for after Shabbos, even if it does not involve any malacha whatsoever. Any obvious preparation, as opposed to what we were saying before, where the vegetables is not obvious because you might eat another day. Any obvious preparation is forbidden. Now,
This piece of meat fell by itself into a bucket of water.
no problem.
You still gonna be allowed to use that in showers.
You didn't do any malacha. Just extend it. You didn't do any malacha. There's no malacha here. The whole point of achana is that even if it's not a malacha, you can't do it. So the point is, the Alter Rebbe goes ahead and says another chiddush, that even if you want to get a goy to do it, and a goy, we know you can get a goy to do a shvus, an issa d'Rabbanan, in a case of necessity. So here, apparently, it seems like a necessity. No, can't do it. Why not? Who remembers?
Why they could not allowed to do it?
Yeah.
Because you know they're allowed to do it.
Yeah, but it's a shvus to shvus. It's double d'Rabbanan. So maybe it should be mutter. Big necessity,
You have
loss.
another way.
Oh,
You
what's
have
the
another
other
way. You can on the barbecue.
Exactly.
Roast.
Exactly. The Alter Rebbe says it's not a loss. There's no loss. You'll make a barbecue, and you'll be okay.
About the meat, Rabbi?
The meat.
They said here about the meat, you're allowed to tell the goy to put it in the water.
That's the Mishnah Berurah's opinion. The Mishnah Berurah quotes the Elya Rabbah.
Or Rabbi, they said if you have no goy, you like to take you clean end and
The Mishnah Berurah quotes those opinions.
Is that an opinion?
The Mishnah Berurah quotes that.
Uh-huh.
That you could have a goy do it, some say. Some say even if there's no goy, you can wash your hands over it. So it's not obvious that you're doing it for the meat. It might look like you're simply washing your hands and you didn't find a better place to do it than over your meat. That's one thing. And then he brings another svara that perhaps even out there would agree with, that the whole thing does not apply to a butcher. It only applies to a private owner. Private owner, what's the difference if he barbecues it or he cooks it? But a butcher, if he has to sell it as meat that could only be roasted, obviously it's not going to be worth as much. People are not going to pay as much if they're being told how to prepare it. So for him, that represents a financial loss. And the same thing applies to...
for the butcher, it's okay to tell the goat to do it?
Yeah, that's what he says, yeah.
Or to not Rabbi?
He says it, I mean, Alter Rebbe doesn't say it, but he says that swore that the Alter Rebbe could agree with. Because the whole swore of the Alter Rebbe is that there's no loss, but in that case, there would be a loss. The same thing he says about fats. Like nowadays, we're not so much into fat. We try not to be. But, you know, like the shuman, exactly, the geese, let's say, the foie gras, the fattened geese that have all this fat. If you roast that, the fat's gone. So you're missing out on that. You do have a financial loss from the loss of that. So that's another case that Mishnah Berurah says might be mutter according to all opinions. That's correct. Yeah. Same thing. Same thing. That's all. We don't differentiate. Okay, we can. Yeah.
Sorry, if they don't confirm in about 10 minutes, I'm just going to go and take the bus and catch this later on.
All right, let me see what Joseph says. But Joseph can come. I know Joseph can come, then I'll text Lachana.
Yeah, about what?
Oh, there you are. I didn't know you were here. Can you come to Meyer at 10?
Sure, if you need me, but I davened already.
You davened already. Who didn't daven
I
yet?
daven.
Not one, not two, not three, not four. You did not? You did.
I did. I kind of did. I did not.
You did, and he did. So we only have four. Even if Elchanan didn't daven, it's only five. Oh well.
I'll try to get somebody in a few minutes. If you give me a few minutes, I'll try to
Yeah, the thing is, I only have a few minutes because if the bus only comes like once every 45 minutes, so I have to get a bus on I have to leave here in 10 minutes otherwise.
So we have five?
We have four.
I'm going to beach
The truth is, Elchanan probably davened already. Not two, not three,
There
not
may
four.
be one at 10:30 at the yeshiva.
What?
Maybe at 10:30 at the yeshiva. Victoria's time.
Am I ever on strap?
So what's the situation?
I don't think you should call the guy because we'll only have five, even if he doesn't.
If I get two?
You get two, then we're good.
Just check it.
Two didn't daven, yeah.
Just know that the sure thing is the one in the pool.
I did not.
One,
One and two.
That's I don't want to
Yeah, the yeshiva's back now.
I've never been to the issue. I don't even know where it is.
It's on 10th Avenue, Miami Gardens, where the intersection is like a yeshiva. Okay. So we continue and we say, now for your information, rinsing blood off meat, if you are interested in eating the meat raw, you're allowed to eat meat raw, by the way, even if it's not salted at all.
We don't have that.
Exactly, we learned it in Shin Yud Ches. Unlike when you're going to roast the meat, we said you have to salt it lightly. You're eating blood. Dam evorim shalei pirish is mutter. Dam hanefesh is like the blood that spurts out. Now, if you cook it, or even if you roast it, it moves a little bit. It moves a little bit out, but maybe not completely out. So that's the thing. So if you eat it raw, it stayed in its place. Dam Nevram Shalei Pirish is mutter. The whole Dam Nevram is only Rabbanon. Dam Nevram is only Rabbanon, that's for sure. Dam HaNefesh is also, that's the blood, the lifeblood that spurts out, or if it's like in the heart, like a bunch of blood. But the dam that's nivla be'evarim, that's absorbed in the evarim, is only Rabbanon, correct? And it's only also even Rabbanon if it moves from place to place. If it stays in its original place, it's mutter.
Rabbi, like this Shabbat, I have a chicken, a full chicken. On the leg is an old blood.
The color one, yeah.
I mean, it's inside, it's not moving, but it's cool. Is this okay?
Yeah.
I didn't mention that. It's good.
Yeah.
My son ate it.
They should, I mean, base medrash started, but the high school didn't start, so in theory, I'm sure that they have.
That's the base Medrash Minyan. I'm sure the high school doesn't go to 10:30.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm in the process.
Okay. Now, rinsing off the blood is not considered any problem because that's not changing anything. It's just like rinsing a plate off the whatever.
Let me ask you in general. We don't need it for, right? We don't, it's not edible. So in general,
Yeah, I mean,
to use it or
whoa. Most people don't eat it raw, but it is edible. Some people do eat raw meat. It's mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, in Shinchas, Siman, Shinchas about Muktzah.
No, meat also too.
No, it's different than that. It says in Shinchas that some people eat raw meat, and it's not considered strange, and therefore it's not muktzah. Therefore it's not muktzah. Now nowadays most people don't, so maybe that changed. But it's brought in Shulchan Aruch that it's not crazy to eat raw meat. On the contrary, in the time of the Shulchan Aruch, they did not eat raw fish. Raw fish was considered 100% muktzah. Nowadays the opposite. Nobody eats raw meat pretty much, but raw fish people eat all the time in sushi. I don't know about raw chicken. I don't know when it says raw meat, does it mean meat, not chicken? I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay.
You cannot change the halacha for the meat to be muktzah.
No, we may have.
We can change that. So why we cannot change?
How are you? The man
You
they're
got
looking
Meyer
for.
or no?
Oh,
So we only need one then.
We just one.
One
you
that
only need
didn't
one.
have.
One that didn't daven. Let me ask Chacham if he davened yet.
Getting close.
Don't worry, we have a backup. Don't worry.
Thank you. Shkaya.
Joseph, you're off though, because you davened already. You're lucky.
It'll be good to see him.
We'll see you next week. Hashem's help. Remind me before you all leave tonight. I want to cover Bosnia one last time. Hopefully, I can get through.
But you're allowed to pray Arabic with the Kavanah. If they need you for Minyan, you can pray again.
לא שמעתי מכזה דבר.
לא שמעת, but הכוונה, you cannot do that?
לא חושב.
For sure not for the, I think we discussed this, no, for sure not for the, to be a 10.
Yeah.
For sure not to be a 10 because you prayed.
No, he's asking if you could pray on condition that if they need you, it's like it was. Actually, you can't do an adava before a chayva anyway. You can't do an adava before a chova, so it's not going to work. When you dive in the first time, that's it. You can't have in mind that it's an adava. The first time has to be the chova.
Thinking just now,
Is that only in tribes, right?
Well, the whole thing only applies to Shemana, so you can't do Birchas Kriyashma with the Nadava.
There is a meaning.
No such
I don't
thing.
think, you cannot do it.
We have enough redundancies next, don't worry.
10 or 10:30?
They have a 10:30 at the yeshiva, at 10
Okay.
o'clock at the college. So worst comes to us, if we don't get a minyan, we'll stay and then we'll go to the yeshiva at 10:30.
Okay. All right, my friends, Toichen and the Mishkan. Well, they did it with the salmonim, with the different spices with which they dyed the tapestries. So, Toichen in the Mishkan was actually with something that was not edible. It grew from the ground, but it wasn't edible. Now, Toichen, when it comes to edible items, it depends. If it's gidule karka, if it grows from the ground, so then, even though it's edible, the laws of Techinah do apply. Listen carefully.
If it's what? If it's not edible?
No, if it's not edible, then either one. If it's not edible, so then Techinah applies whether it grows from the ground or not. So no, D'oraisa, absolutely. And the Mishkan wasn't edible. The Samanim were dyes. They didn't eat them. So if you, for example, if you take a stone and you break it up into, you crush it so that you have charsit, like the ground stone, which you could use for I don't know what. That's the D'oraisa. For that matter, if you chop wood very thin, or you even make it into sawdust, that's depends. It depends. Chopping wood could be the D'oraisa, or it could be the Rabbanon. If you chop it in a measured way, exactly, then it's what? Then it's machatach. If you chop it very, very thin, or even like sawdust, then it's what? It's like Techinah. If you chop, why not? Let's say you chop. I don't know. It's exercise. I want to do exercise. My exercise is to chop wood. I'm for argument's sake, and I'm not chopping in a measured way, and I'm not chopping it very small. What is the isser? What? Exercise.
Can a moil?
I'm asking a question. I didn't say it's
saying,
moil.
can a moil chop? I think a moil can chop wood. To
No.
sharpen the knife.
That's a Belazar. It's not the halacha.
I thought a while back.
That's not the halacha. One second, Daniel. The Rabbi Belazar says you can chop wood to make a knife to do a bris milah. But the Chachamim disagree, and that's the halacha. Sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
I thought exercise was okay on Shabbos. I thought we discussed
So
that.
based on that, why can't you chop wood on Shabbos? Exercise.
Well, maybe because it looks like you're going to be like it looks like you're doing the malacha, so it's.
The answer is, I hear what you're saying, but the answer is that it's udin d'choil. It's udin d'choil. It's just a weekday type of thing to chop wood. Probably, like Daniel is saying, sweating is if the purpose is to sweat, then it could be a serfu. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so the point is that I wouldn't know how. I don't think I've ever chopped wood in my life.
You allowed to chop wood?
What? Chop wood?
Not chop wood, John?
I don't know. You tell me.
What were you guys saying? You're trying to get what?
Both, sir.
Only for exercise.
If it's not measured and it's not into small pieces, then it's only udin d'choil.
Even if it's from a tree?
I'm talking about if it's already in a log, not if it's connected to the ground.
Oh.
It's not to the ground, you're doing a major problem of toilish. Actually, toilish is biyadai. You're doing katsira. Okay, so.
So if I break wood with my hands, big branches, if I'm walking in the park, I take a stick and I break it on my leg.
The stick is probably muktzah.
Oh, so why is the log not? Because I'm hitting it?
The log is probably muktzah too.
The axe?
The axe is a klisha malachta le'isr. Less muktzah than the wood. The wood has no status at all. It's not a kli at all. Unless it is. But then breaking it would be...
If someone comes now...
Soiser, I guess.
Can I do another now?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Wait, we have
We have exactly 9, but we need him
9
to
and
not.
1 person that didn't have it.
Yeah. Okay. My friends, when it comes to food that is not gidule karka, for example, cheese, meat, eggs, ice.
Avocado.
That's all I can think of. Avocado grows on the ground. All those things are not gidule karka, and they're edible. So what's the difference if they're edible? The thing about edible things is that because cutting food is normally considered not like a malacha, it's considered eating. You're just cutting your food up.
Are you saying there's a difference between a food like a carrot and a fruit?
No.
Gidule karka?
Both grow from the ground.
Okay.
Doesn't have to grow in the ground like a carrot, as long as it grows from the ground. I was thinking about mushrooms actually. Now mushrooms, you say shahakal on them.
But it still comes out of the ground.
If you don't get surgery, it doesn't come from the ground.
I don't know about mushrooms, actually. It's an interesting question. I was just thinking about that.
What's the number?
Can you slice mushrooms in advance thinly? Basically, what we're learning, the bottom line is that when it comes to something edible that is gedule karka, the rules of Techinah do apply because it's similar to the Mishkan insofar as it grows on the ground, even though it's edible, and therefore you cannot cut it thinly unless it's right before the meal. No, you cannot cut it thinly unless it's right before the meal. And even that is a machlokes. So therefore, you should cut it a little bit bigger than usual.
So is this why we can't grind salt? Because essentially it grows from the ground, even though we're going to eat it with it right away?
No. Oh, shkayach. Chadash Shemenu Kikedem. He didn't have Meir.
No, he came to join back this year.
Oh.
You have a summary. 346 questions.
Well, that's the question.
Okay. So Daniel and Joseph, I hope you'll forgive us. We're just going to break for a few minutes for Meir, and then we'll continue.
Okay.
כל דבר הולך עליו כמו שהוא, ואמרתי לו רגע, שאין במינות סימן כלל, כגון בשר מבושל או צבי, בצבע, היה מותר לחתוך דק, ובסוכם אפילו שלא לאכול מיד.
נכון. נכון. That's if it's not gedule karka. Yeah, basar. I thought you were talking about vegetables. Basar you could do, no problem. No, basar you could do whenever.
But not that it doesn't downgrade kli yuchad, like you can say.
Correct.
You can't use like the ground to use the.
You can't use a kli amiyuchad for Techinah. That's correct. But salt, actually, before we break, I just want to point out salt. Daniel was asking, salt is not gedule karka. It doesn't grow from the ground. But when it comes to things that are not edible, it doesn't have to grow from the ground. You have Techinah anyway. You can have Techinah by things that don't grow from the ground if it's not edible anyway.
Why is it edible?
Salt is not considered edible because you don't eat it on its own. It's only eaten with something else. So we don't apply that. The whole idea is that when it comes to something that you eat, you don't bite into it. You cut it up and you eat a piece of it. But salt isn't something you really eat. You use it to flavor. Okay.
Okay. Who would like to pray because I pray.
Rabbi didn't pray.
Rabbi.
January. A little bit early.
אדוני ישיע, המלך יעננו יכוננו, ויזכרה ישמרו. אמן.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. אמן יש מרבנו, לחתוננו למרביה. אמן. 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 כן, חשוב הכל.
יתגדל ויקדש מרבה, ויאמר דיברה חיותי ואביך וחטא ויצמח וחטא ופרי וישתקה, ויפון וימחון וחטא כל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דמרים בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלום ונשמע חיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
Say the end of the Mishnah out loud when you're saying the Mishnah.
יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
יעמד יברח ירטה וילמד מלכותי ויצמח ונבר ורב ושקט.
אמן.
חי נכון וגם נכון וחי בכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן.
אמן.
ישתבח ויתפאר ויסב ויתדע ויתעלה ותנח שני תקודשה ברכו.
אמן.
ויעמד כל ברכתה וישרתה תשבחתה ונחמתה ויעמד ויאמרו אמן. חי ישראל והרע ונמלת מזון ואלכוהול תמדית מדון. כל מהנדס גיבורתה דיברתה עדים ודיבר אתר ואתר. תהיה להון ולכון שלב הרב הלכין הלכיסת ברחמי. חיים עריכים ומזונות ובכלל ופורקנה מקדם ובכון כדשמיא ואמרו אמן. יש אמרה ומשמיא וחיים טובים עלינו ביעקב ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום בממח הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ביעקב ישראל ואמרו אמן.
ברוך.
All right, Rabbi Zai, with no further ado, we continue. Okay, so like I was saying about salt, that it doesn't go into the category of foodstuffs. Similarly about pepper. Even though pepper is an edible thing, talking about spice. But because it's not eaten on its own, so it's not considered that you're allowed to cut it up into small pieces. So the halacha is, and this is a surprising halacha, that when it comes to grinding pepper, even though grinding pepper in the normal way is an isser d'oraisa, you are nevertheless allowed to crush peppercorns with the back, like with the handle of a knife. Handle of a knife. Because that is a shinui gadol, and the Chachamim allowed it with a shinui gadol.
Any spice? Just for pepper.
As far as I know, any spice. Yeah, any spice. Not just any spice, but any food. Any food, like we're going to see later about crushing avocados, bananas.
So if you have your salted, once you get rid of the part,
Yeah, that is ein Techinah Techinah. Because that's already pieces that just got clumped together. Ein Techinah Techinah, by the way, applies to matzah meal, to bread, something that's already crushed. So there's no issue to crush it again. So salt that's already been made into granules, if it gets clumped, there's no issue to crush it.
So it's going to be the same the whole matzah and bread that used to be talking to flour. So
Yeah.
able to crush it, so that,
Yeah, correct.
no problem.
No problem. You want to break it up into small pieces, you can break it up into small pieces. As small as it was before, where it was flour. Ein Techinah Techinah, by the way, doesn't mean that if something was cut very small, that you can cut it even further small. You know what I'm saying? If you have vegetables that are cut before Shabbos, you can't say, oh, it's already cut, I can cut it more. That's not the point. The point is it was already cut, and then it got together, but because it's already been separated, it's not a malacha to separate it out again. Okay, so Lamaisa, this is a chiddush, and it's hard to draw from this chiddush and apply it to other cases. That with a big shinui, you should be allowed to even do an isser d'oraisa.
What defines a big shinui? So,
Here, the big shinui is the handle. The handle, as opposed to the knife itself, is considered not a shinui.
any other keli or no?
No, for example, it says you can't use a wooden
Or a
pestle.
hammer or something? It's a hammer you can use to break nuts.
Nobody does that.
I don't know, it's just when you're saying big shinui, it just seems it's very, very specific to this case.
Yeah, I don't know about a handle. I don't know about a hammer.
It's shinui.
So,
I don't know.
one of the questions I think was if you're allowed to class on Isur d'oraisa b'shinui. I think it was one of the questions. You refers to just this specific case with the garlic pepper.
I wasn't, but here you have a chiddush that in some cases you're allowed to do an Issa D'Oraisa with the Shinui Gadol.
So you refer it to a general.
Yeah, I was asking a general question.
So based on this, you're going to be allowed
with a Shinui Gadol.
Yeah, but I'm not going to tell you what's a Shinui Gadol. In other words, where the Chachamim said, they said, but I'm not going to. If the Chacham didn't say it, we're not the ones to decide what's a Shinui Gadol.
The answer for the first going to be yes.
The answer, in general, that it's an Issa D'Rabbanan. To do an Issa D'Oraisa with the Shinui is.
That they're allowed to do.
No, but this is a very,
What
very,
Chazal
very
said,
big
if
chiddush.
Chazal said it, if they didn't say it, we can't apply this to other cases because we don't know
Very
what's a
much an
Shinui Gadol.
exception of the general.
And they also made it over here because it has to do with eating and it's the Einig Shabbos and so on. So
But what we learned, what the person is supposed to be related to what we learned. So based on Melachat Torchen and come to grounded pepper. Okay, so
the answer for Melechas Toichen, the answer for Melechas Toichen is with this particular Shinui Gadol, yes. For this specific case and this specific Shinui, yes. Correct.
That's the only one we learned
That I
of.
know of.
That's the only one we
The
learned.
hectare sees back of
Back of an eye.
do any type of tension?
Yeah. Toichen of food. Toichen of food.
No, so I'm gonna take lush. Make Techinah on Shabbos lush. So let's say I want to cut a so I want to cut it in black and white.
Try, go for it. Go for it.
I'm saying
what's the Shinui, Rabbi?
Like we are allowed to crush the nuts with the hammer.
You're just breaking the shell, with the crushing.
How about the corn breaking the shell?
I don't think so. I don't know. Do they come in shells? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. Are you asking?
I don't know. I'm thinking about, I never saw anybody take a banana and take a hammer and smush it.
I never saw it either.
This is Shinui Gadol, it's called.
I don't know.
You will need to with a banana.
No, he's asking about the banana. Crushing it
Banana.
with the
Did you see
banana.
anybody take banana? Hammer
But you
and
wouldn't need to.
Yeah, make it food for baby.
Peppercorn, you can't do.
No,
For
whoa,
baby.
whoa, whoa,
I
whoa.
want to do a banana
Well,
for
who
baby.
says you don't need to? You want to crush a banana and make it into
Crush.
mush. Crush
For
a
baby,
banana. You want
for
to
your baby,
mash.
for baby.
Yeah, but that's,
Not crush. You want to mash a banana.
but this specific Shinui Gadol.
He's asking if the Shinui Gadol of a handle of a knife applies to a hammer. That's his question.
Right, that's what I asked earlier.
Yeah, I don't know the
So we
answer.
don't know.
I don't know that, but it is a question. Banana is a
Very good
question.
tool to use for the banana, because that you can actually use a banana. It wouldn't work with a tomato, but a banana would work.
Yes.
Doesn't it start to smush a banana?
So that's actually that's actually machlokes. The Tehillah David, echoed by Moshe Feinstein. Exactly. The Tehillah David, echoed by Moshe Feinstein, says that the whole concept of toichen is when you break something up from one piece into many pieces. But if you mash it from a okay, thank you. If you mash it from being like one piece to being a mush, but not actually separate pieces, then it's not an isser of toichen. Yeah. So the Chazon Ish disagrees. The Chazon Ish says, no, that's mamish, the worst kind of toichen, because you're completely obliterating it, not even into pieces, but completely mashed. He says it's even worse than toichen. I mean, how can it be worse than toichen? That's toichen plus. What do I mean is toichen plus? He says, when it comes to regular toichen, when you cut it up into small pieces, there is an opinion, which is the Rashba, that you can do it right before eating, because before you eat, you cut it up, so big deal, small, big, whatever. When it comes to mashing, that's definitely not part of eating. That's a preparation for eating, because you don't mash as part of your eating. That's only a preparation. So he says that even the Rashba would say it's usher to mash even right before eating.
Avocado, you want to smash to spread it on the bread or banana or anything like that.
The Ramah says that you're allowed to spread it on the bread because that's not, you're not makbid that it should be so smooth and so beautiful. The Ramah.
You have a problem with that?
No, I don't think so. He doesn't say it as a machlokes. He just says it as a chiddush. I don't think.
If one has no shinai, he allowed to even eat something.
So according to Moshe, it's no problem. According to the Tilal, it's no problem. But according to Chazon Ish, it's a big problem. However, using this chiddush, you could mash it with a handle of a knife or the handle of a spoon. And Reb Shlomo Zalman says, and this is a very helpful chiddush, that you can even use the back of a spoon instead of a fork to mash a banana. Exactly. Normally you would smash it with a fork because the tongues, make it. But because you're using the back of a spoon instead of a fork, that's already a shina according to Shlomo Zalman. You have a big chiddush though. According to Shlomo Zalman, you have a nice header.
They say shibush b'tzalachat, but not b'maftesh. Tzalachat, it's okay.
That's another point. That there's a machlokes when it comes to crushing it. Can you crush it into a bowl, like they used to crush with a mortar and a pestle, or do you have to do it onto a plate? Some say you need two shinui: the shinui of what you're crushing it with, and the shinui what you're crushing it on. That it should be onto a plate instead of a bowl. Some say it doesn't make a difference, so it's better to be machmer. Correct. All right, so that covers pepper, covers bananas and avocados. No. Did I say only pepper? I meant only toichen foods. I didn't mean only pepper. I meant toichen of foods.
Only for this specific, we consider Shimon Gadol, but you didn't say that we can apply to.
No, foods. I'm saying you can't apply it to malachas in general, like shinu gadol, because we don't know what a shinu gadol means. But when it comes to toichen of foods, you can use this heter. Shinu gadol, correct. Okay, so now we said already meat, cheese, and eggs are not considered gedulei karka for this discussion. Although if you remember when we discussed this, we also mentioned that concerning the malacha of dash, which it says is only applying to gedulei karka, there it says that meat and fish and eggs, I don't know about fish, meat and all of that is considered gedulei karka. That's why you can't milk a cow. That was a shayla that we asked. I don't remember what we answered. Cows. We asked the question last time. We asked the question. It seemed like a steer. I don't remember what we answered. Exactly.
But still alive, but after his death, I think it was machlokes between the meat or I think it was about the dairy part.
I don't remember the answer, but that's what we said is the karka. Concerning Lisha and Mefarik, it's considered the karka. I don't remember what we answered. I'm not sure. Anyway, for this purpose, no. So it's like a machlokes v'shonim. For some reason here we're asking it's not, and there it is. I think maybe it's a tziruf of another sheet over here that it doesn't apply to any oichal, so we're soymach on the. I think that's what it is. I think over here some say it doesn't apply to edibles b'chlal, and since some say that's not going to do the karka, it's like we're mitzvah of the two. That's what I have in my head. Anyway. Yes.
You know the egg, the tools, you cut it slice.
Yeah.
He said you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, but last time we talked, I did not make sure clear you can do that.
So here's the thing. Oh, why not? No problem. And Shumbaya. Here's the thing. When it comes to cutting these things, chopping these things, you cannot use a kli that is miyuchad for toichen b'chlal. So if you have a chopper that you could use for vegetables, which are aser, you cannot use it for meat. If you have a grater, for example, right? You can't grate cheese with a grater because that same grater can be used to grate vegetables, which is an issur d'oraisa. So to use it for cheese is an issur d'rabbanan. However, if it's a type of utensil that is only used for cheese, and cheese doesn't have toichen, b'chlal, there's no way to do toichen with cheese. So then it's mutter to use it because it's not a kliyam miyuchad for a malacha.
Yeah.
So the same thing with the egg slicer. It's made for eggs. It doesn't really work for anything else. Oh, but salad is an isser. Salad is isser, yeah.
I'm just cutting it.
I'm saying to cut salad small, is an isser, right? Maybe it's mutter if you do it right before. Okay, but the etzem, cutting vegetables small, is also. So that's why that particular one you can't use. But if it's made for cheese and meat and eggs, which are specifically not toichen, so then it's not a udin dechal because it's not a kliyam yuchad for toichen.
But he said you can allow to do salad as well, and nichshav lesakinim.
That is because. Mutter leishtam b'shem kliyam yuchad lechidr beitz and paris as well. Yeah, because you use, it's not going to work, whatever. If you want to try to cut a vegetable with the thing that you cut eggs with, you can try. I was a lawyer left. Try it, see what happens. You can bring it back to Bed Bath & Beyond. They take anything back. Okay, so, Lamaisa, we continue and say, raw meat. Exactly. So it's not considered oichel. Now, I did come across in the Dirshu the question of cutting vegetables thinly, but only vertically thinly. Instead of cubing them like an Israeli salad, cutting them to thin strips. He brings different achronim about that. If that's a problem or not, because you're only doing it thin in one direction, not in two. Maybe it's only toichel if you do it in two directions. It's good to know about this machlekes. I don't know. I'm not going to take a stand. I'm just saying. It brings two opinions. Something to know about. Okay, so we already said that the Rashba says that if you do it right before eating, it's mutter, because talking about vegetables, because that's just the way to eat. The Beis Yosef, however, points out that not all of the Rishonim agree with the Rashba, and they don't bring down this heter. And therefore, it could be they disagree with it. And therefore, he recommends that you only follow it by cutting them somewhat larger than usual. And the definition of somewhat larger than usual is not exactly clear, but whatever, somewhat larger than usual. So you should basically not make an Israeli salad on Shabbos unless you make the pieces somewhat larger than usual. Hard to know exactly what that means. I guess, yeah.
But if you make different size in the salad, it's okay?
What do you mean?
Let's say Israeli salad, right? They make it small, and a couple of them, they make it big.
No. Everyone should be big. Everyone should be. Everyone.
So a little bit bigger than usual. So
a little bit, noticeably bigger.
And if someone like Israeli salad small, you make it a little bit bigger.
Noticeably bigger. It should be that you could tell the difference. Not that it's a tiny amount bigger. You know what I'm saying? It should be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we continue and we say, okay, egg slicer I mentioned. Apple slicer. You use an apple slicer?
Nice.
They are gewaldig, especially with Rosh Hashanah coming. Apple slicer, basically you push it through and it takes out the core and you have like pieces, like 8 pieces. Perfect.
See, I didn't know about that.
Mutter or not? Everybody, instead of waiting at your table, butchering the apple, it's ready.
Okay.
Mutar, because if they said that for the eggs, mutar.
It's made for that.
Something to the salad now, so why the apple going to be allowed?
What do you say, Daniel?
I said it's okay because it's made for it. It's just like the other stuff.
It's made for it. Is that a reason to be mekel or machmer?
Mechel.
Really?
Yeah.
Usually something that's meyuchad lakach is also. Something that's made for it is usually also.
But I thought you said for the cheese and, because the cheese and the eggs don't grow from the ground. That's why we could use them.
Exactly. Because they go from the ground, so therefore there's no tochen by them. However, Rafal is bringing something else up, which is what I think is correct. I didn't see this discussed, but I think it's correct that basically the apple core or cut or whatever it's called is basically cutting it into large pieces. It's not cutting it into small pieces. So what's the problem? You're not doing anything.
Just a really cool.
Exactly.
Are they measured pieces?
Are they measured? Yeah, I don't think so. That's not called measured. It's not called measured. That's not a shape. It's a piece of apple. Every time you cut an apple, you're making a shape. That's not a shape.
Yeah, but also you're not grinding it into like a small. That's not making
exactly
it
his point.
small.
That's Rafal's point. Because you're not grinding it, it's made to cut. It's not made to grind. That's not called grinding. So I would agree with that. That's not called shapes. There are knives that you actually do cut with shapes. You know what I'm saying? There's things you can make a star shape. You can make that's something else. But that's not this. It's not this. No. All right, my friends. You cannot chew food for babies.
Why is that?
Because chewing is tochen. Chewing with your mouth is tochen.
So the mother cannot chew the food for.
No. Chew it before Shabbos.
she can do it in a grinder before Shabbos.
That's true too, but it's not as good.
So when the guy is apple side, yes or no?
I think yes.
The way I will honest like it.
Yeah, but it's not a miyuchad for tochen. It's not tochen. It's big pieces.
You don't use a peeler.
First of all, a peeler is not so clear. It's not so pashut. On Shabbos, it's not pashut. It's not pashut. It's not pashut. It's not pashut. Because if you're allowed to peel, then it's not a kliyam yuchad lekach. It's a machlekes you're allowed to peel. Saying, if you're allowed to peel, some say you're allowed to peel.
What?
Because it's not butter, because it's edible. If it's edible before or after, it's like cutting, it's not like peeling.
What about kotzer?
I'm saying if you're allowed to peel, then it's only a kliyam yuchad lekach if it's a kliyam yuchad for something aser. If it's a kli that is miyuchad for something mutter, so then what is it? That's no problem. Just like a knife. That's what Rafal is saying. What's a knife? A knife is miyuchad for cutting. Cutting is not aser. This is miyuchad for cutting, but it's not a forbidden kind of cutting. I think it's correct. No, peeler is a machlekes. I'm not getting involved in that machlekes. The apple cutter.
אין שאלה בשביל האוכל קוצר.
קוצר זה מהקרקע.
מהקרקע.
Okay. We don't take honeycombs from the beehive, in case you wanted to. And even if it's already been separated from the beehive, we don't crush them to get the honey out of them. Even the honey that oozes out of them, you can't eat, because maybe you'll come to crush them. Okay, that takes care of that. We move on to Lisha. Lisha means kneading, correct. So kneading is an issa d'oraisa. Kneading means when you use liquid to connect small pieces of solid in such a way that it becomes like a mass, like a mush. Now, we had different opinions about...
I just have a question on the last point. So if you had a piece of a honeycomb in your kitchen, not straight from the beehive, and honey is oozing out of that, would that still be usher? Because sometimes in the store they sell the honeycomb.
Right. I think so. I think it would be usher, yes. Mm-hmm. Unless you crushed it before Shabbos. If you crush it before Shabbos, then what continues to flow out remains mutter.
How much would you crush it into big chunks or something like that? I mean, I've never done this, but I'm just thinking about it.
I don't know. He does mention it in Reish Nun Beis, in 252, the Alter Rebbe. He mentions this, so that's the place to look. You know what? Maybe he mentions it here too. 1 second. When by contrast the honeycomb was crushed while it is still day, the honey that oozes out from on Shabbos is permitted, in keeping with the laws governing the liquids that emerge from olives and grapes that were crushed. That was still day stated in that source and in section 252. In that source, Alter refers to section 252, where he explains that once the produce was had already been crushed, even would crush it for the ban, only ben would be involved, and as a result, yeah. He doesn't define exactly how crushed is crushed, but crushed.
Okay.
Okay. So, when it comes to the issue of Lisha on Shabbos, there's a few machlokes about the issue of Lisha. First of all, about the question of something that is bar gibel or not bar gibel. Bar gibel means something that when it mixes with liquid, it actually successfully masses together, becomes one mass. Not bar gibel is something that doesn't really do that. It maybe the tension of the water holds it together, but it never really binds and becomes one. So, for example, an example of lav bar gibel would be ashes. Ash, when you mix it with water, it'll cling to each other, but it will never actually become one mass like with flour. Exactly. No. Tit is an example of bar gibel.
Yes.
Tit is bar gibel. If you mix mud, dust and water, it will become mud and it'll dry and it'll become one mass. So that's a machlokes if bar gibel is an issa d'Rabbanan or an issa d'Oraisa. Another machlokes about Lisha is no that relates to bar gibel or not. If it's if it's Lisha daka, if it's thick pieces, it's not going to be bar gibel. That's another that's related to that. If it's not dark, presumably it's not bar gibel. It doesn't really stick together. No, I don't believe so. No, gibel could be if it's edible or not. I don't think there's a difference. I think there are opinions that say it doesn't apply to oichel, but I don't think that's the halacha. It's not the halacha. Okay, so there is another machlokes, however, and that is the malacha just the adding of the liquid to the solid, or is it no? I don't mean dafka in that order. I mean, is the iser the combination, just putting them together, or is it only asur midaraisa when you mix it? That's another machlokes. Some say just the adding of the liquid to the solid, that's already the iser d'oraisa. It was Rebbe and the Chachamim. Yeah, Rebbe said just adding. If I'm saying Rebbe says just adding it is an iser already, and I think it was Rabbi Yosef B'Chanina says no, it's only when you only when you mix it. The Maisa, if we want to be machmer and follow the stricter opinion, so what that means is that you can only make a Lisha, a blila raka, a loose mixture. Why? See, if you say that the iser is not until you mix it, so then yesh makom lomar, possibly you could make even a blila ava, even a thick mixture, as long as you do it with the shinui. You could add them with the shinui, and you could mix it with the shinui. But if you say that just the adding is already the iser, so no matter how you mix it, you've already done the iser. So according to that opinion, there is no way to possibly do a belila ava on Shabbos in a permissible way, even with the shinui.
So Lisha is going to be between solid and liquid. Lisa mentioned before that you make a comment, you cannot make a Techinah on Shabbos.
Yeah.
But it's liquid and liquid. Techinah it's a liquid, and I'm adding more liquid and I'll make it a little bit soft. It's not solid. So what if this is not solid of liquid? So we're not going to be allowed them to do Techinah on Shabbos. You just take the Techinah and adding water makes it.
Go ahead.
So two answers. One answer I saw was that because of Shlomo's own says that they're talking about the Techinah that they had then was the powder. So the powder plus the water, that's like the chemical one. That would be awesome. But really nowadays with the Techinah we have now, it shouldn't be such a problem because it's already been taken.
So Lisha, you mean?
It's already been blended water, and that's what you get. You get the paste. It's a concentrated paste.
So you're basically just adding more. You're turning it from a velila ava to a velila raka, basically.
Then someone said that in that process, it's becoming very, very, very hard. So it looks
like it's not even
I guess using brush. No, it becomes problematic because there's a certain point at where it looks
where it dries out.
right, and then like that's the whole thing. You mix it so it's I guess
Dried out.
not dried out, but hard. I guess very thick, very, very, very thick, and then it gets to be it's in that safer, and then it gets very loose. What's the word? Proper word? Loose out. It gets more
Liquid.
liquidy. And then I saw that's not a problem also because it's a very temporary thing that's going to go away immediately. It's just in the process. But I think the cooling only you can't do it with chazan. You can't do it fast.
Yeah, that's always a problem to stir something very fast. It's like a Ibud and the chol sort of thing.
Usually add water to the Techinah, but if you're afraid that you're going to be hard and just from hard to soft, just adding into the water. But if you don't make Techinah on Shabbos, in general, it shouldn't be a problem, correct? Because there's no Lisha.
I mean, I hear you, Svar. I have to look at that to see.
It's in Lush. There's a section on Techinah. No, they should not. Someone must speak.
Yeah, he brings two shitot here. But the shita makila is the one that makes more sense to me. But I don't really make Techinah, so it's hard for me to relate so much to it. Yeah. But he does point out that if you do with the shinui, then it's mutar l'choladeus. Yikas instead shemechila comes rak l'suda achas. Yosef Techinah golamis ma'at mayim v'yisker v'yarba b'koyach. But it's not even mutar. Even just a shinui gol b'chnasa gisa.
What did you say, like with Techinah? Like sometimes it comes in like the really thick stuff, and so if you want to add water to it to make it a little looser so you can serve it. Is there any inyan of Techinah there?
Here he brings that Shlomo Zalman says not to do it, but he brings other achronim that say that you're allowed to because it's already considered like it's needed. Could be he only meant the batter. That's what he's suggesting. It could be.
You know, when we're asked the question, you have time to look it up, time to think about it.
So, how about, are you gonna tell us in the last minute if he is gonna test us next week or not, or how's it
You're gonna call him now, you said to remind
I'm
you.
gonna call him right now. Hopefully I'll get through. I don't know. I haven't been able.
Because it's gonna be, if it's not, it's gonna be less pressure, we can spread, I can spread my video, I'm not gonna, you know.
No, it has to be.
No.
Should help.
I mean, like, it's gonna be less pressure if it's not, so no, I have to.
For my own sanity, I have to.
Yeah, I know.
I have to move on.
No, for sure, for when we start.
I have no problem, but as long as it's, you know, not like you. Yes, no.
Okay, everybody, so we're going to stop here, and the plan is tomorrow night, 8:15 sharp, in Mirz Hashem. I am not planning to have Ma'ariv tomorrow night, so hopefully I'd like to get a minyan.
So I won't have him also.
So if we can get a minyan, it would be nice. I'm going to call him right now while you're here. Maybe he'll just test you guys right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
On the spot.
Yeah.
One question
tomorrow afternoon, not put on the chat, see who's responding, because if it's not minion, I'll just have a
Okay. Let's ask now, who can come tomorrow night? Is everybody coming tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Who's not coming tomorrow?
So I will not do Ma'ariv if all of you to be here.
You're gonna be here tomorrow? Okay, so I'm gonna miss one.
One no problem.
We're just missing one. I'll text Chacham.
Okay, so.
Or maybe Joseph. Joseph, can you come tomorrow
All
night?
of us will be here, Bezat Hashem. So you don't need to dive in tomorrow, Ma'ariv. Only Mincha.
Wait, can we have like an extended version of class tomorrow?
You know what? I'm going to try to come early. I'm going to try to be here by 8:05.
Oh, 7:20.
He wasn't thinking like a 10.
Oh, 7. I have too much going on.
Yeah, if you come at 8:05, we'll be ready.
Rabbi, do you think we can make a decision by tomorrow one way or another when the test is?
I'm going to call him right now. One second. I just want to find
You
out.
don't get.
It's not okay. It's not okay.
We're just planning for tomorrow night. Wondering if you can come to class and Meyer at 10 o'clock.
How's it gonna work? No,
Because it affects.
No, he just called. Trying to reach for the rub. Phone number. No,